Hey gamers, ever encounter frame drops and stuttering in games? Are you not getting the desired frames within the games that you play? Are you sick of poorly developed and unoptimized games ruining your gaming experience? Well, I might have a solution for you, and that solution is a Steam app called Lossless Scaling. What is lossless scaling? Well, lossless scaling is a third-party app that allows you not only to upscale your imaging, like FSR and DLSS, you can also use it to generate extra frames in your games. This even includes older graphics cards ranging from the 2000, 3000, 4000, and 5K series RTX cards. But instead of reading what it does, let me show you how it works and how to use it appropriately. Once you have the app installed, go ahead and open up Lossless Scaling. And inside Lossless Scaling, it's going to look very similar to this, if not exactly like this. Now, my layout is because I'm on LSFG 3.1, which is their most recent version. You can swap the versions at any time you would like. These are their frame generation versions that you can use. Now, how does this app work? Well, if we look up in the top left, currently I have around 60 FPS in playing Dune Awakening. That's because I capped the game at 60 FPS intentionally. Now, for those who play this game, they know that the game is notoriously bad with frame drops and stuttering. And that's due to assets loading in, building assets, and just poor optimization in the Unreal Engine 5 because a lot of developers these days just do not know how to optimize their games anymore. Now, how can we go about fixing some of those stutters? Well, in my situation over here, we have LSFG 3.1 mode fixed multiplier 4. So what does that do? So when I have this enabled and I hit the button scale, it's going to count down for 5 seconds, and then in those 5 seconds I have to click the game or the application that I want to have those frames generated in. And with a multiplier of 4, it's going to take my 60 FPS in the top left upwards of 240 FPS. And because it's set to fixed, it's going to try to maintain that perfect ratio of times 4. So 60 times 4 is 240. Now, I also need to mention that my monitor is a 240 Hertz monitor, or 240 FPS. So the goal is, when you're trying to frame generate a game, you always want to hit the limit of what your monitor can support. Or if you can't hit the 240, the next goal would be to do half of that, or 1/4 of that. So in an example, you would do like 120. You could aim for 120. Or if you were downwards of 30 FPS, you could do 60 FPS. But that would be a ×2 multiplier. So in the fixed situation, you only use fixed when you are limiting your frames in a game. So I am limiting 60 FPS. If I turned off my limited in game, I'd probably get around 112, 190, depending where I'm at in the game. And that is a variable. Now, the reason why I'm doing fixed right now is this is just the most consistent for this game. But let's say I don't want to set a capped FPS in my game. Well, then they have a mode called adaptive. What adaptive does is you can tell it to target a frame that you would want. So in this situation, 240 frames, I'm basically telling my computer, hey, I want 240 frames. Can you adaptively make or generate frames to hit that number? Now, with such a large number, that means it's probably going to be ×4. ×4 is fine. Most modern graphics cards can handle that just fine, with very low impact on millisecond response times. So say I didn't want 240. Say my monitor is only like 160. I could just type in 160, and then I would hit scale, click the game, and then it's going to adaptively try to generate frames to 160. You always want to use adaptive when you are not limiting your in-game frames and you're just letting them freeball, basically. Now let's go over some of the extra menus in here. So performance. Performance mode is strictly if you're using like a lower end graphics card like the RTX 2000 series, or even, I wouldn't suggest trying a GTX series. I don't even know if it can, but say in the lower end RTX 2000, maybe turning on performance would be a benefit. I have not noticed any difference at all. Scaling, this is just their version of in-game scaling. So most games, these days they use DLSS. Now, in a situation where a game didn't have upscaling and you wanted a reduction of resolution but increase in performance you could do LS1. LS1 is their innate version of upward scaling, and it's probably the best that lossless scaling is going to have. Now, granted, I don't use lossless scaling for resolution upscaling because a lot of modern games generally has that now. But if you run into a game where you're absolutely needing to squeeze out every little bit of performance that you could possibly need, you can use lossless scaling's upscaling mode. You don't need to mess with this. Rendering. Now, this is interesting. So how rendering works is generally you're going to want to leave it on default. VSync does not play very well with any sort of frame generation. You could attempt to turn it on if you're really having like some crazy frame tearing, but for the most part, you're probably not going to run into that issue. Max frame latency, this is a pretty important one. This is going to limit how long it takes for the frames to go in, or called ghost framing. Generally, you want to keep this number between 2 and 4. That's going to basically do a frame buffering of 2 to 4 frames before they're generated into the game. That way, the transitioning between frames is a little smoother and it's not janky and jarring. You could go way up, but it's probably going to look terrible. And if you go down to a 1, well, effectively, you're not really doing anything. HDR support, you can leave this on. G-Sync support, you want to leave this on. Draw FPS, what this will do. Now, it doesn't show, unfortunately, because I'm recording, but up in the top left, it'll show some little numbers here, and it'll be like, oh, you're generating at ×4, and it'll show a 60-240. So you want to have that on so you can visually see what's going on. Capture doesn't matter. Clip cursor, some people turn this on to keep the cursor from leaving their screen. I don't really care about that. Everything else here is pretty much ignore, 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 ignore. You don't need anything else. Now, for the most part, that covers almost everything that this app can do. Now, say you weren't comfortable with adaptive and fixed. You could go back to an older generation, which is LSFG 2.3, and then you can just do it simply by generating frames by ×2, ×3, ×4. So whatever frames you're getting currently in the game, it's just going to double it, triple it, quadruple it. Flow scale. Now, even though this says downscaling the flow scale to lower resolution monitors helps performance, I have noticed the exact opposite. I would, in fact, not even mess with this at all. Unless you can somehow get it to work yourself, I do not find any benefit from this, and in fact, it causes more artifacting in game than anything that I've seen so far. Now, finishing thoughts and a final statement. I wish I could show you all this being done out in game, but from what I'm aware of, anytime I hit scale and while I'm recording, it ends the recording. Like, frame generation and recording does not play well together. So as much as I could show you an example, and maybe I will, I'll try to clip something in at the end of it actually working. But if it doesn't, I'm sorry. But for all the information that I've given you, this should be enough to get your games. And this works with almost any game, by the way. This can be some old, ancient games, MMOs. I've used it in Final Fantasy XIV. I've used it in Helldivers. I've used it in, like, Stardew Valley, where a game is capped at 60 FPS, and you're like, well, I don't like 60 FPS, I want 120. You can get 120 in Stardew Valley if you wanted to, without mods. So, universally, it's a fantastic tool. It works with almost every game I've ever attempted to use it with. I've not found one that hasn't worked yet. But in the situation it doesn't, I apologize. I don't know everything about the tool, it's not mine. And hopefully this helps, and helps you play games better, and hopefully if you play Dune, it will make Dune less a shitty experience, and that's it. Have a good one.